Hello everyone, this is Taka from BigHeadTalker.com, and I'm here in an obscure alley in Towawan near my mother-in-law's house to do a review of my very first Micro Four Thirds camera, which is the Leica D-Lux Type 109, which is the same as the Panasonic LX-100. They are sibling cameras. Internally, they're probably almost exactly the same. There might be a few little differences, but I don't think so. And this is my very first time using a Micro Four Thirds camera, but not the first time using this series from Panasonic/Leica. I did have the original Panasonic LX series, which is the LX, well actually it's not the original, the LX1, LX2, and I got the LX3. And the reason why I got the LX3 is because it went to 24mm equivalent wide angle, and so that's kind of why I fell in love with that camera. It was using a 1/, I think it was a 1.6 or 1.65 inch sensor, which is considered an enthusiast size sensor at that time, and it was a 10 megapixel camera. Now this is a 12.8 megapixel camera, so it doesn't seem like it's much of a difference, but Micro Four Thirds is a much larger sensor. So let's start this review. Let's talk about some of the things that I liked about it, some of the things that I think should be changed on it or can be improved upon, and then I'll give you my final conclusion. So the Leica D-Lux Type 109, I'll just call it the D-Lux, is if you think about its place in the range of different cameras that are available, I would say that a camera like this is perfect for travel. The reason why is because the sensor is big enough for the average, like even a camera with a smaller sensor is good enough, but a Micro Four Thirds sensor that it is cropped, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but is large enough even for certain professional commercial use. And many of you have seen my iPhone pictures, even those pictures are good enough. So this is definitely can handle low noise, like low light with reasonably low noise images, and as well it has a range from 24mm to a 75mm equivalent. So in terms of prime lenses, it's a 24, 28, 35, 50, and an 85. So from wide to sort of a little bit telephoto range. So that's more than enough for a traveling photographer. It has UHD 4K video, which I'll post some video samples as well. As well as standard 1080p with 60 frames per second. It has optical image stabilization, which is great again for low light situations as well as for video. And the aperture range on this is actually quite amazing for the size of this lens, the size of the sensor, an f1.7 to f2.8. Now for me as a street photographer usually shooting during daylight, the reason why I like the f1.7 to 2.8, now when you zoom a lens, here as you can see when you zoom this, I like the fact that if you're in autofocus, you can actually use the ring. I don't like this toggle type zoom. It just feels out of place in a camera like this. But as you zoom out to 75, you can see how the lens extends out. And you know, it does get darker as it zooms out. But when I shoot on the street, I'm typically, with a sensor like this, you can probably still get reasonable depth of field at f4 or f5.6. So if I leave it at f4 and I zoom in and out with this camera, at maximum, there's no aperture shifting. It stays at f4. So if I'm doing manual exposure, so let's just say f4 at 1/1000 of a second, and I have it set at, let's just say ISO 800, that exposure stays there, and I like that. So yes, maximum aperture is great at 1.7, but the fact that even at full telephoto it's only at f2.8, that is a marvel. Leica/Panasonic must have done some kind of engineering magic or something to be able to get that. I'm in a very busy alley here, so maybe we'll shift to another location and we'll keep on talking about this awesome camera. The things I like about this camera, as I already mentioned, is the manual aperture ring. That's great because I don't like fiddling with buttons just to change the aperture, and this is designed for photographers, not for videographers, because it is there is those click stops there. Now if you were a video guy and want to shift the aperture, you want that nice and smooth, so sorry video guys. This is has a lot of potential to be a good video camera, but this click aperture ring is not one of them. As well, the aspect ratio. Now this was on the all the Panasonic LX series and the D-Lux series, and people know, some people don't understand the theory behind this, but they maintain the same angle of view. So we know that most Micro Four Thirds sensors are now up to about 16.3 megapixels, or around 16 megapixels. This thing maxes out at it's a 12.8 megapixel sensor, but depending on the aspect ratio, you get different megapixels. So for instance, I wrote this down so I won't forget. At 4:3 aspect ratio, which is what the sensor is, you get a 12.5 megapixel image. At 3:2, you get a 12 megapixel image. At 16:9, you get an 11 megapixels image. And at 1:1, you get a 10 megapixel. So 1:1 gets the most cropping, and then it's the 69, the 3:2. So if you want to get the most out of this image, it's 4:3. And many of you know I'm not a big fan of the 4:3 aspect ratio. I actually prefer 16:9 or wider if I can get it. So that is what you get with the sensor. But still, even though you're not utilizing the full sensor, you got a bigger, like for instance, the iPhone now is up to 12 megapixel. Is this going to shoot better pictures? Yes, of course. Because the space between each pixel and the size of each pixel on this camera is much larger than what's on the iPhone, which is a 1/3.2-inch sensor, so that's tiny. So you're going to get much better images at night, clearer, sharper images, as well as optically. This is going to be a better camera, better lens here than what you can get on a smartphone. So another thing I like is the quickly being able to shift between manual focus and autofocus. So as I mentioned, when you're in autofocus, this ring here is for zoom, which I actually like. I don't like using this as a toggle. I'm used to this being an on and off switch because I shoot a lot of Leica and Fujifilm. But when you switch to manual focus, then this becomes a manual. Focus. It's having a lot of fun. It becomes a manual focus ring, which makes sense. It's logical. So I like that. The EVF is great. The reason why I like the EVF is because instead of it being a pop-up or an accessory, it's always there if you need it. Now, if you are shooting in a mode where you want to look like a tourist, it's great to shoot like this. But as soon as you want to have serious shooting, to have an EVF ready to shoot, that's a great thing to have. Built in. Is it the best EVF I've ever seen? No. I've compared it with the Fujifilm X30. This is better than that. But is it as good as what's on a mirrorless camera, like a regular interchangeable lens mirrorless? No, it's not. But still, I'm glad it's there. A proper shoe, so you can put accessory flashes or other accessories on here, even like an LED light if you are shooting video. I like that this has an info screen. So when you scroll through the different display modes here, there's a mode here that is, it just gives you the basic info, and the Fujifilm has this as well. And I like the info screen because if you're walking and shooting street and you want to take a quick glance down to see where all your settings are at, and a lot of them like aperture, shutter speed, exposure compensation is there, but as well as white balance, and if you're shooting raw, those sort of things, you can see right away where your mode, what ISO you're at. You can see down, but as soon as you're ready to shoot, it knows by default to not have this info screen in your EVF. It knows that you want to be in shooting mode. So right there, I just took a picture of the camera. So that actually is a really cool mode. I like that. As well, let me see here, easy to focus wide. So when you're shooting 24mm wide, even on a full frame, after about 8 feet, everything's in focus. So with a smaller prop sensor, when you're shooting at 24mm equivalent wide, which on this camera it is 10.9mm on a Micro Four Thirds, it's really easy to shoot at 24. And I think a lot of people, when you first turn the camera on, by default you shoot in this wide mode, and because of that, I think that when you're doing street photography, relying on the autofocus on this camera, it doesn't have to be the fastest focusing camera because it's wide. It focused. I found it rarely missed shots, so I like that about that. And as well, leaf shutter. You know, everyone knows how much I love the leaf shutter. This has a standard mechanical shutter that goes up to 1/4000th of a second, which is right here. You can see that on the shutter speed dial. But then it goes up to 1/16,000 electronic. Now, if you need that high shutter speed, it is great to have, but just be careful of rolling shutter. And that is also true for shooting in video mode. You can adjust the shutter speed and aperture while in video, but just watch out for rolling shutter. Alright, so those are the things that I liked. Now let's go over some of the cons and the things that I think can be improved upon. Should we try to do a conclusion here? Let's do it very quickly. Am I in focus? Alright, very good. Cons or things to watch for. Custom mode, C1, C2, C3. I didn't realize that when you're in, it's good to set the custom modes, but there was a default C1 that someone had set, and I think it's way too loud in here. So let's find a quieter space. Alright, we're along the water here. I think I found a slightly quieter spot to do a bit of a cons and as well as my final conclusion. As I was mentioning, the custom modes. Remember to set your custom mode, meaning you set your ISO, your aperture, your white balance, what mode you like to shoot in, RAW, JPEG, set all those things, and then set custom C1, C2, C3, and then when you want to shoot in that mode, for instance, let's just say black and white street photography plus RAW, then you have that set to C2. You have to remember what you set it at. It'd be nice if you can name it, but just for now, remember it as C1, C2, C3. And then you can even set that as one of the custom function buttons in the back so you can quickly access your 3 different custom functions mode. As I've already mentioned, I don't like that toggle zooming on this camera. I wish this was just an on and off button and find some other way. I don't mind zooming from here. I just don't know what else you can do. Maybe an actual manually zooming lens. That'd be kind of cool. Let me see here. The JPEGs, even on the original LX, not the original one, I had the LX3. The JPEGs were okay. You could tweak them a bit, but if you want really good colors, you have to shoot it in RAW. There are those little fun modes like night mode, snow mode, that kind of stuff. They're just they're alright. Maybe you can work with one of them and really play around and make one of them work for you, but in general, I didn't find any of them that great. I wish this camera can play while the camera's turned off. So this is what I mean. If you want to just look at your pictures without having to turn it on, it doesn't work. You actually have to turn it on, which then extends the lens out, and then now you can press play and you can actually see your images. So I wish you could turn it on just to watch, and then if you try to shoot by pressing the shutter button halfway, maybe a little thing can come up and saying you must turn the camera on. Because I understand that this is an actual physical on and off switch, but for a point and shoot, it would be nice for the lens not to have to extend out, just to go and look to see what you've done. So other than articulating screen, it would be nice if this had one. The fact it doesn't, I could see it working. It'll just stick out a little bit. I mean, this sticks out already, the EVF. So if it was kind of tucked under there, it doesn't have to be the full articulating, but even if it's just sort of like the angle one for street photography, shooting down low, I didn't mind the angle. You could still see what you're shooting, but if you had an articulated one, that'd be a little bit nicer, and that would be almost a perfect travel camera. So that is pretty much my conclusion. This camera is great if you have to take just one camera on vacation, be able to take photos with reasonably, like when you're on vacation, people seem to think you want more zoom in terms of telephoto. I find that wider lenses, especially in a city like Hong Kong where everything is compact, it's nice to have a 24mm equivalent wide angle. You could shoot 4K video or 1080p at 60 frames per second. You could shoot with an EVF and shoot like a pro and get really like critical shooting, or you can shoot like a tourist like this, and for street photography with the 24mm wide you can get really, and I'll post examples of the shots I got while shooting just sort of like this and looking like an amateur. And that's the thing about this size. This camera is small enough that when you're out shooting, you'll never be mistaken for a professional. And that might be a hit on some photographers' egos, like you want a camera to make you look like you're professional so that you can sort of strut. But I find the smaller the camera, the more discreet. I mean, if you yourself know that the camera can take great pictures, who cares what other people think? Who cares if somebody looks at what you have and thinks, He's just an amateur. In the end, you know, the proof's in the pudding. The proof is in the images that you can make. And this camera, I don't have to peek at its, I haven't even looked at the images other than the back of the screen here, but I'm sure once I process the images that I will be blown away at its image quality, because I've seen images taken on Micro Four Thirds and it is a very capable sensor, and so I know that this D-Lux can take fantastic pictures, and so I'm looking forward to looking at that. $200 price difference between this and the Panasonic equivalent. I think it's worth it, even if it's just for the nicer accessories. Leica has nice leather cases, nice leather strap, nice grip if you really want a grip. You can add that on here, and so for that reason alone, and you get Lightroom for $200 difference, I think it's totally worth it. Is this a replace, like, since smartphones, like my iPhone 6s, since this can shoot 12 megapixel, isn't this just good? No, it is not. Yes, this can do 4K, this can do 4K, this has 12 megapixels, this has 12.8, in actual use 12.5 is the most you can get, but you will get much better low light performance, you get a better lens, you will have more versatility and control over the images. So my final conclusion, this is a great camera. I love it. I wish I could have it for a longer time so I can really put it through its paces. I know there's more things to talk about, and perhaps if I can have this longer, I can do a more of a full review, but alas, I only have it here for my Hong Kong trip. So I would say thumbs up, great camera. Thank you for watching this review. More reviews to come. Like if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and happy shooting. Click, click.